Hello, and welcome to another episode of How Are You Holding Up? A mental health podcast by the depressed for the depressed. My name is Lindsey.
And I'm Chris.
And the first thing I want to ask you, Chris, is how are you holding up?
I feel lonely. I am in a room by myself. You are in your cabin in the woods.
Yeah, we are trying a new program that Chris found, which is excellent, but it also means that we don't get to see each other's faces.
Yeah, it is going to be. Hopefully, the audio comes out as good as I'm hoping. We will of course be experimenting with this method and seeing if you guys think we sound better, then hell yeah, we'll keep doing it. If you don't think we sound better, then we'll have to find something else.
Yeah, if this is a huge difference and it's really unlistenable, please let us know. Mm-hmm. It might hurt our feelings, but we'll get over it.
Yeah. But otherwise, I am doing pretty well. I've been doing my mental health mood app, the Mood Path app, and this is the first time that it has come back to me saying no indication of a depressive episode.
Oh my gosh. How long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing this, the app, it's been a few months.
So, yeah,
it's been, let's see. The results go all the way back to at least, October of last year.
Oh my gosh, so it really has a year of data on you.
It literally has a year of data on me. And of that year of data, it's been everywhere from indication of moderate, mild, severe, to this is the first one. It says no indication for symptoms of depression.
Congratulations, Chris. That's awesome.
I know. I'm pretty
amazing.
Stoked. It's no indication for symptoms of depression. Your answers are within the normal ranges of the population. I find that hilarious.
You're normal population, Chris.
I am one of the several billion people. Hooray for me.
At some point, it's going to become, I think, rare to not be depressed.
I feel
in this society. That's my thought.
Yeah, I think we're already there. Speaking of, Lindsey, how are you holding up?
You know, I have been doing pretty darn well. I'm still up in the cabin in the woods, and it does get a little bit lonely from time to time, and I'm starting to hit that emotional wall of, okay, Lindsey, you really do need to start going out and meeting your neighbors and trying to start taking some yoga classes or something like you said you were going to do. And then the other part of me is like, but I don't want to go outside. And that's something I've always struggled with. So a little bit of agoraphobia, a little bit of, I don't really even know what that is, but
yeah.
So that's something I'm it's a challenge for me right now. But mood wise, I'm very happy and I feel very lucky. And so I think that's a cool thing for me to feel, because so often when I was feeling good, I was afraid that it was going to go away. And so then I had an anxiety about, well, okay, I'm happy now, but when is it going to go away?
Yeah.
So right now I'm just enjoying it.
I was always more than capable of just counting down the seconds until my next depressive downturn. Let's not enjoy what we've got right now. Let's just dread the coming months.
Exactly. And it's interesting for me with this podcast because I have not been doing a mood tracker, but being able to go back and listen to times where I was depressed and really hear how my verbiage changes and how my thinking and my patterns change.
Absolutely. I love completely just going back and hearing myself barely able to cohesively put thoughts together while we're talking. And I could absolutely hear moments where I had completely checked out and I was just disassociating, and it's rough.
Oh my gosh.
It's absolutely rough.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that happens when you are vulnerable with your depression and you're in a space where you don't have a ton of emotional energy is you start surrounding yourself with people who might not be totally healthy. And that's what our episode is on today, is on toxic friendships.
Yes.
And that's something that I found myself involved in a lot,
Yes, I
actually.
believe we've both had our experiences with people that I guess you could absolutely just say are toxic. They may not seem it at the time, but there may very well come a turning point where you finally kind of wake up and go, oh, this person is leeching any good from my mind. I should not.
Yeah, and I think something that I had to realize about myself was because I was in toxic relationships, I had toxic friendships, and I realized I am also a toxic person. And that's probably a topic we should hit on one time is when you realize that you are toxic. And
Yes.
so when you start going to therapy and when you start working on yourself, however that may be with meditation or just a mentorship,
Hmm.
and you start trying to change those things. I remember I have this friend who also suffered from depression and anxiety. And he told me, he's like, Lindsey, I've been doing therapy for a few years now. And a lot of what I thought were my friends left when I started to get better. And they actually were getting angry with me and they would snap at me when I started doing more healthy, um, had healthier interactions or healthier responses to things. For them, it was like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, what's going on with you? And they would put him down.
Yeah.
And I actually started noticing that.
It is amazing when you take the time and you see like the habits of you and the people around you, and the moment that you start making changes for yourself, the people who do actively sit there and judge you or blame you for changing or aren't happy with your decisions that you're making, if they are genuinely healthy situations that you are putting yourself into, then if they have a problem with it, it's definitely on them. Most assuredly.
Yeah, and I don't want to put blame first and foremost. I don't want to put blame on any of us who have been in toxic relationships or who have been toxic people because oftentimes when you are toxic, you've
Hmm.
learned it from a parent or a sibling
Yeah.
and that's something that you were raised in. And so the best you can do is to realize it and then try to change it. And so I think a lot of people who have these bad coping mechanisms or toxic ways of how they show their how they bond with people, it's they don't know better. They were taught that, and so anything else isn't. They don't even know that they're being toxic. Most people, I think, who also are abusive, it's the same thing. They don't understand that that's what they're doing. So having just like a little bit of empathy out there for all of us and those who have been toxic is it's unfortunate that that's what is usually the case. So, but I want to talk about the first indicator, which is I think walking on eggshells, that feeling where you have to be very careful about what you say or what
Yes.
you do. And if you're feeling that way, you're probably in a toxic friendship.
It's a little Jeff Foxworthy bit. You might be in a toxic relationship if but it's absolutely true. The idea of walking on eggshells is it's I mean it's not necessarily exclusive to toxic relationships. It can also be just people who tend to kind of fly off the handle sometimes, like they are easily excitable, or people who have horribly, people who are very anxious. Like there's a certain propensity for them to be treated with kid gloves.
Yeah, and I think that can become toxic. And that's not the same as like being an abusive friendship or whatever, but it
Oh,
can start,
absolutely.
it wears down on you. And for those of you who are not native English speakers, walking on eggshells means you have to be so careful about everything you say or how
Hmm.
you react. And I think that's a good way of explaining it. How would you explain it, Chris?
Yeah, I would 100% agree. It is the visual representation of when you walk on eggshells, you're trying so desperately not to crack any of them. So you
Yes.
be extra careful in everything you say or do. It is simultaneously terrifying and borderline just anxiety inducing. Like if you are having to walk on eggshells for people, that fear of like, well, what if this thing I say upsets them, or what if this thing
Yeah.
I do makes them angry?
Yeah. And I think
it's
it can
it's
get go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say it can be terrifying. if
Yeah,
you are
and
in
I
that
think
position.
it can be confusing too because some of us, when you're depressed and you already have anxiety, you already are blaming yourself for everything. So
Hmm.
you're already like, well, maybe I am um, too harsh with how I say things, or maybe I am, so you're already you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see that you're already doing that. And it's possible that you're doing that with people who you don't need to be. Some people don't need you to walk on eggshells and you're doing it anyway. So it's hard to be able to differentiate between this person is eliciting this response from me
Hmm.
versus this is coming from me because of my past trauma or because of my mental health.
There is a certain a mental condition. It's called borderline personality disorder. It is one that has a sort of stigma on it, but it has one. It is specifically known for that kind of walking on eggshells behavior in the people around them. Because with
Mm.
borderline, a lot of the things they're very triggering. They're very much in that state of fight or flight a lot of the time, and they do
Hmm.
tend to jump to a lot of very fast, emotionally driven conclusions uh, based on what is going on around them. I've had several
Yeah.
friends in my life who've been borderline, and some of those friends I have had to cut out of my life. It just was necessary for my ability to take care of myself.
Mental
Yeah,
health. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah.
And that's the other thing that sometimes, I mean, you have to just know yourself, I think, in that, you know, you have to be able to tell who is it in your life that's draining you and whatnot, but not everybody has to be cut out completely. Like
Hmm.
that's not something that, you know what I mean? Like you said that not everybody who had
Yeah,
borderline you cut out. It was you had to choose certain, yeah.
you got to choose
So
your battles.
yeah, and I think walking on eggshells for me often looked like this. It was, someone would ask me a question about, well, what do you think of my relationship or blah, blah, blah. And then I had to be so very careful about how I would word something. And even still, usually I would say the wrong thing. Or I would be, this kind of bleeds into bad boundaries, but I would be afraid to say no
Yes.
because I'd be afraid that they would get mad at me for holding up my boundary of, no, I can't have you over today or whatever. And it was like, really? What are you doing? What do you mean you can't have me over? I know you're
Hmm.
not doing anything. You never do anything, Lindsay. You always stay home. Like, come on, let's be real, And then like they put you down a little. I was like, cool.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. It does kind of come with that territory of like, no, I'm the most important person in your life. What are you doing? Who is this other
Yeah.
person?
And the
There's
problem is when you have depression, like that can be a relief to have somebody in your life who is so big
Mhm.
and so pushy that you don't have to make your own decisions. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with,
Yeah, it's
being drawn to people who are just really pushy.
yeah, it's absolutely true. I think there's there's something about like that kind of person that just draws you in by far because
Yeah, it's
there's
addictive.
yeah, it's there's an addiction to that kind of excitement, that kind of
Mhm.
this is a person with whom life never really gets boring.
And let's be honest, when you're depressed and everything is gray, having somebody that elicits intense emotions in you, even if it's a painful one, usually there's a sort of pleasure that comes from making up with that person.
Yes.
So in a way, it's like at least you're feeling something.
You are wanted, you are driven
Yeah.
to spend time with this person. It's whatever it could be, but you do hopefully find your way and you discover that there is a better
Yeah.
path. So you have to recognize when a relationship is becoming
I think
toxic.
yeah,
Friendship, especially.
friendships specifically for this one. And then I think the next one you were
Mhm.
saying, um, was, where they give you life or death situation. Extremes.
Yes, oh man, there were so many occasions
Oh, no.
where it would just be like you would be told that you need to do something or you need to help them with something. They'll die if you don't help, or they threaten to hurt themselves.
Yeah, I've known people who have actually hurt themselves. Um, that I know we usually hear that more in romantic relationships, I think,
Yes.
but it can happen in friendships just as easily.
Hmm. And to be fair, people who threaten to hurt themselves are people who absolutely need help. there's nothing more to it. If they're threatening to hurt themselves,
Yes.
there's a very good chance that they're actually going to follow through with it.
What do you think would be the right if someone threatens to hurt themselves, how do you help someone like that? Because at that point, you take a step back and you're like, wow, this person is like seriously needs some mental help.
Mm-hmm.
Do you call someone? Is there, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do? What's a resource?
I mean, ultimately, in my experience, when I've had to call someone, it's simultaneously, if they're actually actively threatening to hurt themselves at that point, and they're actively threatening to kill themselves, and they have a plan, and they're following through with it, you call the police. You call 911.
Yeah.
That is a life-threatening emergency. They are threatening themselves and others, and that can lead to a feeling of guilt, a feeling of remorse, because if the police catch up with that person, hopefully they do, but that person will then be taken for a psychiatric evaluation. They will be taken to a hospital. They will be held for 72 hours, most likely. And this is all based on my knowledge of at least California law in terms of this situation. But you will feel a certain amount of remorse that you've put them in this situation. And if anything, they will try to put that on you, that you called the cops on them. You told, yeah,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
your fault. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, that's the manipulation coming in,
Yes, and the
you
emotional
know.
manipulation is a huge aspect that you brought up.
Yeah.
There is nothing more telling that you are in a toxic friendship than them emotionally manipulating you, or really manipulating you in any way.
Yeah. And I think some of the lesser I don't know, signs of being in a toxic friendship is stuff like where you also become manipulative in terms of how much information you give them. So if you feel like, wow, I can't tell them that I hung out with this friend tonight
Mhm.
because they're going to be upset with me. That's weird. You know, if you just leave it out in conversation because you don't think of it, fine. But if you are actively like, I can't tell them this because they'll get mad at me,
Mhm.
that's probably a good sign that you're not in a good friendship. And they have manipulated your reality of being like, this is not, you don't feel safe. You've got to feel safe with your friends. You've got to feel uplifted with your friends. And when you're depressed, it's hard to feel like you deserve those things. And sometimes you don't even feel those
Yeah.
things. But yeah, the whole addiction of being with people or surrounding yourself with people who hurt you or demand some weird emotional stuff from you, that's something that took me years to get out of.
Yeah, and it's hard when you kind of get drawn by those kind of people, like especially they're narcissists are kind of
Yeah.
notorious for being able to pull people in and buy their story, of buy their hype.
Yeah.
And so you find yourself kind of like buying into the hype, and this person is amazing and blah blah blah. I once had to cut out a friend because we both got drunk one night, and that friend like just was staring at me, and I was feeling really
Oh
weird,
god.
and I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he just like turned to me and just said, "What do you have that I don't?" And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to become a skin suit soon. Okay, I'm having a great time.
Whoa.
Yeah. They were having a
That's not
really rough period in their life. I, at the other hand, had like a job, and I was in a relationship, and things were going pretty good for me. But on their end, it was some weird unfairness. And I was just like, what the hell is this? So I backed away, and I was legitimately freaked out. And I did not have contact with that person for basically
that
ever.
yeah. Were there other things that kind of led up to that?
There were other things, like, I mean, they did have a certain lifestyle that was very much driven by drugs and alcohol. And those are things that if you don't actively do at the extent that they do, where they're abusing it, they can kind of they want it can be occasionally driven by their desire to make you feel bad for them, And that
Yeah.
is why they want to keep your friendship. They want to hold you close because you are this one anchor, and that in
Mm.
and of itself is emotionally manipulative.
Yeah.
So you gotta pay attention when it's a situation like that. Again, somebody who needs help, but it is not your responsibility to care for them, and it's not your responsibility to white knight for them.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of pull for me to help
Mm-hmm.
people and get involved. I think I learned codependency early
Mm-hmm.
on, and that's really just does it looks like, taking on other people's
Yeah.
problems and emotionally. And so I would, and I would be drawn to these people who are just so unable to give to me
Mm-hmm.
in the way that I needed. And they would take and they would take,
Yeah.
and I would let him. So I had bad boundaries. I had this one friendship that I'm still in mourning over. I knew her for a
Mm-hmm.
very long time. And it was one of those friendships where she would break up with me as a friend when she would get a boyfriend. She would tell me, I can't be your friend because you're whatever. And it would be off and on where we would, we'd become friends again. It started back in high school, so that sounds immature, but you get kind of sucked into it, and it was so painful, and it was so hard for me to make close female friendships, and I was always drawn back to her because I looked up to her. She was pretty amazing in a lot of ways, incredibly bright,
Mm-hmm.
really driven, fantastic writer, and then it came to me living with her when I was an adult because she'd apologized. She'd come back around. She'd apologize. She said, I'm way too old to be ending friendships. That was so toxic of me. I'm so sorry. And this is where it gets tricky when someone can call out the fact that were not
Mm-hmm.
healthy and apologize. Um, and so of course I let her back in my life and we bonded really fast again. And it was probably one of those things where it's a codependent relationship where one's the narcissist and one is
Yep.
the people pleaser. And I am a people pleaser, and it would be fine, fine, fine. And then she would just say little horrible, biting things. And what ended up kind of breaking it all apart for me was I found out that she would hang out with my other close friend. And the whole time, she would just be talking badly about how I was how like all the guys used to like me in high school and I would use them to get food, like the weirdest, smallest things. And I guess she felt like I was really beautiful and really thin. And she had this huge, rageful
Yeah.
jealousy towards me that she had never told me. I had known this person for almost 10 years at this point, and I had never been told the things that she was venting about me to other people. And it was so hurtful because I had been there for her through some really rough stuff, like parents
Yeah.
passing. I mean, really, really heavy stuff. And I had opened up to her about the abuse that I had dealt with. And she later told me, I never took your abuse seriously because my situation was so much worse than yours.
Fucking hell.
And the hard thing is I still have friends who are friends with
Yeah.
her. And she has reached out to me most recently and was like, I'd like to get back in contact with you. I miss you. Can we talk? And I really don't. And this is the first time where I was like, I didn't really reply. And that makes me feel really guilty because I'm a people pleaser. But at the end of the day, I don't think that anyone can change that drastically. I've heard the same story before. Enough things have happened where I just can't. And this is the other thing is I can't trust
Mhm.
her again. If you feel like you can trust someone again and you really truly see that there's a change in their life, then maybe it's worth it.
Sure.
But it's, I mean, that's the hard, nobody can tell you exactly what to do. But
Actions,
in
yeah, I mean,
general,
actions speak louder than words, first
yes,
off. And
exactly.
in experiencing the number of times that those words were empty, this is one of the cool things that I feel narcissists in particular don't get is that apologies don't make things better. They can be a
Yeah.
start, they can be an acknowledgement that you have
Yeah.
an understanding that you've done something wrong and you would like to make amends, but that doesn't mean the person you're apologizing to has to accept it. And that doesn't mean that the person you're apologizing to has to listen to you or is you're not entitled just because you apologized. So,
Right. I think that's a big lesson that it was hard to
yeah.
learn and no one teaches you when you're young, that apologies are important but
Yeah,
that's the first step, like you
exactly.
said.
So
Yeah.
there's one
Yeah.
last thing that we in terms of this toxic relationship thing, and this goes for all relationships, but this is one of the worst things in particular to deal with. And if you do find yourself being a victim of it, it is for certain pretty good evidence that you are in a toxic relationship, and that is gaslighting.
Ooh. Yeah.
It is one of the worst things to experience in terms of coming from someone that you love or trust or have been friends with for a long time, is when they suddenly, or maybe not so suddenly, you come to the realization that anytime something is going wrong, they will basically say it's your fault and you're crazy for thinking otherwise.
Yeah, a good indicator that you're being gaslit is that you start feeling like you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you will remember, let's say you remember a fight
Mm-hmm.
really well, and
Yep.
you remember them saying something totally heinous to you, and you're trying to make up with them, and you bring it up, and they're like, "I didn't say that. When did I say that? How exactly did I say that?" And you're like, "Well, no, you said that. No, I don't remember saying that. You know what? I don't need to talk about this right now." That's being gaslit.
Yeah.
And you start feeling like, well, they're saying that they didn't say that, and I don't have a very good memory, so because I have depression, so maybe they didn't say that.
Maybe they didn't. Maybe I made that up in my mind. Maybe there's a good chance that the people I talked to about this and everybody that I had discussed it with, maybe they're all crazy too because they remember it.
Yeah. It's hard when you're raised with somebody who gaslights you. It becomes, you kind of lose your sense of self. And so when you're with people who are very strong and abusive, gaslighting is basically hand in hand, I think, with everyone who's
Mm-hmm.
emotionally abusive. That's just, the
Yeah.
blatant lying. They deny, and they use what you love against you. That's a big one, is when you start finding things uh,
Like a hobby.
used
Yeah.
against you, held against you. Yeah, 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 exactly. I'm trying to think of a good example.
Um.
It's hard, it's funny when you go through an abusive relationship. So much of the time, I blank it out
Yeah.
afterwards. After I've healed from it, I've kind of disassociated from some of that stuff. So it's hard for me to remember moments where that happened. What about you, Chris?
I mean, for me specifically, there was a reason why I basically stopped playing video games for years. Was just because it was a whole lot of guilt being thrown my way and a lot of uh things like, you said you'd promise you'd spend time with me tonight. I was like, I did? Okay, I thought I was gonna play games tonight and have some me time. Okay, I guess I did say that. Okay, I'm sorry. And when you're apologizing for wanting to spend your free time how you'd like, it's one thing if you agreed to something and you've planned this out and you've
Yeah.
made a note in your calendar or something, and that's one thing. But if you're getting your hobby blamed or your free time is being taken away and manipulated, like that to me has been like several times.
Yeah, let's say, like, your friend, or you're like, "Hey, yeah, I went shopping. It was really fun." "Oh, really? You went shopping? I thought you said you didn't like," like, they start to kind of try to break you down. And that's the other thing, is you start
Hmm.
losing yourself in this relationship, because they start molding it the way they want to see it.
Yeah.
They deny things. They make you feel bad for things that you
Yeah.
love if they don't like it too. Um, and there's a lot of words. There's a lot of no, no, no. No, we're awesome. We're a great friendship. You're my best friend. You're the number one. And then their action
Hmm.
is they never invite you to things. They put you
Oh
down to
yeah.
other people.
That's
That kind of stuff.
so you've discovered that you are in a toxic friendship. What do you do? How do you get out of it?
You go buy yourself a big milkshake.
But Lindsay, I'm lactose
Oh,
intolerant.
there's pills for that.
Oh, well, okay. There's pills for a lot of things.
Lactaid. There
Uh,
is. Um, you know, it's really hard. First of all, if you are in a toxic relationship where you've been wondering, gosh, is my friendship really draining me and is it really as bad as I think? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're facing this right now. I've been there
Yep.
a lot and I will probably be there again.
Yeah. We all will.
um hopefully if you don't already, hopefully you have someone you can turn to who is
Mm-hmm.
definitely healthy, a therapist, a family member, even though sometimes maybe they're too truthful with you and you don't always want to turn to them because they're a little bit harsh, but maybe right now you can. Um, I know I've had some family members who I've been afraid to tell about certain actions of friends or boyfriends that I didn't really want to break up with. I wanted someone to make me feel good about our friendship or relationship.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I didn't want to actually leave, so I wanted people to tell me not to. And then in the end, they're like, "No, this is the advice I give you."
Yeah,
I'm
no,
like, "Okay."
that was
That's a bit
literally a
confusing.
therapist that I went to a year before my last relationship ended, was just straight up like, "Hey, this is sounding really abusive. This is sounding really toxic. You should get out." And I was like, "What? No, I'm fine. It's fine. It's just a bad it was just a
You
bad."
should, yeah,
Yeah,
no. And
and
then
then
you
you
stop
stop
telling
telling
them.
them. Yeah. So, first things
That's tough,
first,
yeah.
find yourself an escape plan. Get yourself get yourself as far away from this toxic person as you can. And I know it'll hurt and you'll feel bad, but you need to really focus on yourself for a little bit because you've been through a relationship that has possibly, hell, probably belittled your self-worth a bit.
Yeah. So really, again, I can't stress enough finding people that are in your life already that you can get advice from, who support you and love you. And they might not be the most exciting people all the time, but those are the people you need right now to heal.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot heal in the friendship. You need to heal separate from them. And you don't have to cut them out totally right away if that sounds too intense for you, but getting some space,
Yeah.
sometimes that helps enough to get you strong enough to be like, you know what, I really do need to end this friendship. Or, okay, maybe I was being a little dramatic. Having space from things, taking things slowly, taking a breather, it's a good choice for really anything, any big decision in your life.
Yeah. It's perfect. So hopefully this if you are going through this situation, obviously, we're sorry, but you're not alone and you're going to make it through this.
We did.
Yep. we
Over and over and over again.
Yeah, and now we've gotten a lot better at it. So,
Yeah.
thank you again for listening. This is going to be one of two episodes that we're going to record this week because follow this upcoming weekend. I am, as I mentioned before, doing the Extra Life Marathon. We are raising money for Children's Hospital Los Angeles. This is going to be our 7th year of playing video games for 25 hours straight. We've already raised $1,000 and some change, and we are hoping to earn even more. So if you want to donate, links in the show notes. If you want to watch us, there will also be a link in the show notes, I guess, because it'll be this upcoming Saturday, November 2nd to the 3rd.
So exciting. I'm so glad you're doing that, Chris. It's cool.
I am going to be dead by November 4th. When the next episode comes out. So, appropriately enough, that episode will be on ghosting. So,
yes. Happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you have a marvelous time.
Follow us on Instagram at HAYHU Podcast, like our Facebook page, subscribe to the subreddit. If you want to support us directly, visit our Patreon. Or if you want to send us something directly, go ahead and email mailbag@howareyoholdingup.com.
We appreciate you. We are thankful for you. And as always, don't tell us to just get over it.